Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Access March webinar. I'm Jenny Cover. I'm the board chair for Access, and this evening I'm delighted to introduce our speakers who are going to tell you about an exciting large-scale research project that offers all of our individuals with X and Y chromosome variations an opportunity to participate. They're going to be discussing NASCAR, which is an acronym that stands for Network for Advancing Sex Chromosome Aneuploidy Research Readiness. This is a 5-year program funded in $8 million by the National Institutes of Health. And it funds pilot studies, it trains researchers, and it conducts powerful research using data from the Galaxy Registry and work done at our multiple clinical and research sites. And that includes the Access Clinic and Research Consortium. The first of our speakers is Dr. Nicole Tartaglia, and she almost needs no introduction with this community. Dr. T, as many of us know her, is a developmental behavioral pediatrician and professor at the University of Colorado School of Medicine. She directs the Extraordinary Kids Clinic, the first clinic established in the consortium and the model for the 19 that have followed. In addition to providing clinical care, Dr. T has been a major contributor to research into X and Y chromosome variations, and she leads the NASCAR project. Dr. Shanley Davis is a pediatric endocrinologist and a physician scientist at the University of Colorado. She's been involved in research focused on X and Y chromosome variations since 2005. She leads the Galaxy Registry project, which is a longitudinal research initiative aimed at advancing knowledge about individuals with X and Y chromosome variations across the lifespan. Dr. Davis is also project director for the international effort to establish clinical guidelines for Klinefelter syndrome. Dr. Tartaglia will start first. Welcome.
Great, thank you. Okay, I'm going to share my screen. Okay, so I am really excited to talk with you about NASCAR today. And what I want to do is give us a little bit of an agenda. We're going to introduce NASCAR and basically what NASCAR means in terms of all the different components of it. And then I am going to turn it over to Dr. Davis, and she's going to talk about the Insights and Galaxy Registries, which are the big major project of NASCAR. And then we will talk about community involvement and how you can be engaged in this project. So breaking it down, as Ginny introduced, NASCAR stands for the Network for Advancing Sex Chromosome Aneuploidy Research Readiness. And what I want to do is just break this down a little bit so that everyone understands all the components and our overall goals. So we're going to start just with sex chromosome aneuploidy and what that means. Many times people describe this group of conditions in many different ways. Sometimes it's sex chromosome aneuploidy, sometimes it's X and Y variations, and then there's many different variations in between of what people call it. But in general, the term aneuploidy is the most correct scientific genetic term, and what it means is an atypical number of chromosomes. And SCA, or sex chromosome aneuploidy, means they're the group of conditions with atypical number of sex chromosomes. So many of you have seen this, the female karyotype and the male karyotype with the different typical XX or XY sex chromosome combinations. And then underneath, you can see all the different variations. So our NASCAR consortium is really aiming to understand all of the different variations and is inclusive of all of them. And we are very enthusiastic about this because it's a nice time to put some research together between Turner syndrome and the other variations, such as Klinefelter syndrome or XYY. And it also allows us to do a lot of really interesting research on dosages of the X and Y chromosomes and include the rarer conditions that often are under researched and underrepresented in our research. And so we really are enthusiastic about being inclusive for all of the sex chromosome aneuploidy conditions. Okay, so that's the SCA. Now we're going to talk about readiness, basically, we originally were going to call it just NASCAR without the readiness, but then we were a little bit worried we'd get in trouble. So we had to add something else to the end. So we are not the NASCAR race team. We are the NASCAR research team. But I am going to talk about what research readiness is, because this was a really important part of the grant and the part of the overall program. So we're going to talk about advancing research readiness. So the idea in general with any kind of research that we approach is that we have whatever problem conditions there may be in the different X and Y variations. So you can see here all the different types of conditions that we may want to do research on: hormonal, fertility or fatigue or other medical problems, and then all sorts of other developmental, learning, or social, emotional, or other conditions, of which there can be various degrees of involvement in all of the X and Y variations. And then the goal is then to get to evidence-based treatments. What kind of medical care is best? What are the best hormones? What should we do for language or learning? And all the different approaches to how we can do research to lead to these differences. And so this is really important, is that, to be able to take all these conditions and then lead to evidence-based treatments, we need to do research. But to do research, we have to have research readiness. And so the idea of having research readiness is being ready to then go down and do clinical trials and develop new treatments. And there's actually a lot of steps and components of this. Obviously, if we're going to be doing these clinical trials, we need to have researchers who are experienced, who know SCA conditions. We have to have research participants who are going to be able to engage in our research. We have to have a lot of background research on the different topics and interventions we want to study. We want to figure out the best tools to measure changes for the research or measure improvements. And we need to do pilot studies before we can move into bigger studies. And so the idea of research readiness is that NASCAR is going to work on all of these different components of building a research infrastructure so that we can do clinical trials and develop new treatments. And then the idea of the network is actually really cool because it involves academic medical centers nationally. I don't know exactly how many. I think there's 26, where we have individuals from all different academic institutions across the country who are specialized and working in sex chromosome aneuploidy conditions. And then we also are aligned with what we call our advocacy group partners. This was a big part of the funding, is that it was required and is really always been very important to us to really collaborate with the community. And so we have many different advocacy groups that we're working with. You can see Access on the top, and then the Turner Syndrome groups, the XXYY Project, Chromodiversity, Living with XXYY, and then the Turner Syndrome Foundation and TSS US. And so these are going to be our partners in this project. And many of you hopefully are part of these organizations. And then the funding and then an additional collaboration comes through the NIH. It's through NCATS, which is the program at the NIH, and they actually have a lot of emphasis on studying rare diseases. And so this network of NASCAR is part of what the NIH calls the Rare Diseases Clinical Research Network. And so I will tell you a little bit more about that. Okay, so now we have all the parts, right? Network for Advancing Sex Chromosome Aneuploidy Research Readiness. So now you should understand all of it. And it's just called NASCAR. And that's our logo, which the team in Cincinnati, which manages all our data, helped us to develop. And there we are, NASCAR. We're so excited. Okay, so what is NASCAR? Well, here's the structure. There's actually three kind of cores and programs, which are the kind of more administrative pieces of NASCAR. And then there's the projects, which are the registries, outcomes, and biomarkers. And we're going to talk through a few, or really all of these things, but some in more detail. So again, I think I told you about the Rare Diseases Clinical Research Network. So just so you know, this is actually, we are one, NASCAR and all of our sites are one of many other consortia that are under the big Rare Disease Network umbrella. So you can see our little piece of the honeycomb here is NASCAR, but there are also consortia that are funded from all of different other rare diseases across the spectrum of pediatric conditions, genetic conditions, various medical conditions. And so the goal of the NIH is really to bring all these rare disease researchers together to be able to work together on rare diseases as well, since we all face a lot of the same challenges. Now, I will say for SCAs, the idea of a disease is really not exactly how we think of SCA conditions, right? We think of them as some of them rare conditions and some of them, more common variations, but there's not a, rare variations research registry. So this is what the term is used, nationally to identify different groups of genetic or medical syndromes. And so we are falling under the Rare Diseases Network. And but really want to emphasize that, many times we really think of our conditions as variations as well. Okay, and look at my star. Oh, that's our NASCAR consortium. So we're on the map, you guys, which is cool because for a long time we haven't been. So as part of the RDCRN, they make us this great website. This is actually the link for the website, and we hope you'll go visit it. And you can see also there's all different categories that you have menus, and this is still being built out a little bit, but it's in pretty good shape. Talks about our research. There's places for patients and families, researchers and clinicians, early stage investigators, news, and all the different programs that we're going to be working on. So I encourage you to go to the website. Okay, so then the administrative core, I am the lead of the administrative core. And basically what this core does, or this program does, is just oversee everything. So, and all the different projects. So we organize a lot of meetings to make sure we're all on the same page, from various levels of the, planning committee meetings to the big all NASCAR meetings that everyone is invited to come and hear about what we're doing and all of our progress. And you'll receive email announcements about those meetings if you want to attend and hear. We're going to have those meetings usually about 3 to 4 times a year. We also collaborate and lead with the collaboration both with the NIH programs and then with what we call the Data Management Center. That's where all of our data is stored. It's housed at University of Cincinnati. And they're a great team that helps us also with websites and communication and all those things. And then under the administrative core are committees. There's a communication and dissemination committee that's led by Susan Howell and CJ Akomi. And basically the role of that committee is to develop the content of the website, give out information about NASCAR activities through newsletters, through social media blasts, disseminate our opportunities for what the different programs NASCAR is offering, opportunities for research participation, and research results, and disseminate those in family-friendly ways. So that's one committee that's really important piece of this that's under the administrative core. Another committee is called the Partnership Engagement Committee. This is led by Sharon Close and Kelly Rinaldo. And this is to really keep all of the advocacy groups together and hear input from advocacy groups and from their constituents about what they want NASCAR to study, and then also to share in this bi-directional way with the different groups all the information that we want to make sure gets out to the different groups. I also am part of the Principal Investigator Committee. All of those pieces of the honeycomb each have one person on that committee. And then our Patient Advocacy Group Committee, NASCAR also has a big committee of all those people representing different advocacy groups, and Access is our primary representative for that group. And then I also get to do all the fun stuff like the budgets, which is actually really cool now because we actually have a budget, like Ginny said. Now, it sounds like a lot, and it is a lot. It's so generous, but it's still, sometimes can't do everything we want. So we still are going to be writing other grants and do other things. The other thing that the administrative core does is less important so much for families, but is really important for the researchers. And we have a team that's called the NASCAR Research Support Team. And basically, you can see here all the different things that this team does. And so it's to help support researchers to get more grants, to develop careers, to be able to know how to do statistical analyses, to help with publications. And so this grant is, or this team is put together by all sorts of experts who are there to support researchers if they ask for help. And so we are really excited about being able to offer that to the researchers as well. Okay, then we have a pilots grant program. This is led by Dr. Hong at Stanford. And basically, we also get funding to give out our own pilot grants. So the goal is to support SCA research by giving different investigators, they're not huge grants, but $10,000 to $15,000 a year to study different aspects of this idea of research readiness in SCA. So this first year, we actually had, I think, 12 applications. They're now all being reviewed, and we will make award announcements in May, and we will have a round of pilot grants every year of our 5-year funding cycle. We are allowed to apply for renewals after our first 5 years, but we have to be really successful in these first 5 years. So we're going to work really hard on that. Then we also have what's called a career enhancement program or career enhancement core. The goal of this is to really train and support the next generation of SCA researchers and to build this idea of expert SCA researchers to conduct all our studies. So this program has actually many different what we call tracks going along with the race car theme. But one of them is the summer internship. These are for undergraduates and graduate students to get information and experiences in clinical research in SCA. This is a great program that's been going on here, started by Dr. Davis a few years ago, well, probably 5 years ago now, and has been really successful. And then we also are going to develop a medical school rotation in rare diseases for those medical students who are already in medical school and wanting to learn more so we can stimulate their interest in rare disease. We have funding to support a postdoctoral fellow each year. That's really an intense research training year with a project and a lot of mentoring to really shape development of PhD and MD students who are interested in SCA. Well, they're graduates now, so they're actually postdocs is what we call them. And then we also want to support junior faculty with all of those ways that we can support them in terms of building research, but giving them also opportunities to build their careers in SCA research. So those are our programs. Like I said, the Career Enhancement Corps has a postdoctoral fellowship. We have had some applications for that we're reviewing. And then the summer internship program actually had 77 applicants to be part of this program. So it's very competitive. And we're picking the best of the best to be our next SCA researchers and to give them great experiences, both here in Colorado over the summer and also at Children's National and at Shaw. So this is a really cool program that we're excited to be able to sponsor now. Okay, and now I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Davis.
Okay, sounds good. So we're going to jump down and we're going to talk about the projects that are in the green here. And this first project being the registries that we're going to talk about that I'm leading. And this is the Insights Registry and Galaxy Registry. So you can go to the next slide. And there's actually some history with this before we even received or even thought about applying for the NASCAR grant. The Insights Registry is specific to Turner syndrome, and this launched in 2019 with support from the Turner Syndrome Global Alliance, who funded us in Colorado to be able to build this registry, recognizing the need for a clinic-based registry that was for more than just one individual center, which is with a lot of rare disease, a lot of the research that takes place is done at one single center. And one of the limitations to that is it is not capturing the rest of the individuals in the country that are not able to go to that center. And it's also often siloing the types of research that is being done in terms of interdisciplinary work and as well as cross-center work. Then the Galaxy Registry was developed in 2020, similar to the Insights, but focused on all of the other X and Y chromosome variations. And this was launched with support from Access as well as Living with XXY. You can go to the next page. Oh, and then both of these are now funded and we call them Project One of NASCAR. All right, so this is a little bit of a busy slide, but I wanted to walk people through it. And maybe Nicole, Dr. T, you can show, starting at the top there, both of the registries, Insights and Galaxy, have steering committees. And these steering committees are stakeholders that come together once a month, and they're volunteering their time. They establish the priorities of what the registry is going to focus on and what the registry is going to do. They oversee the progress of the study and also offer some checks and balances to make sure that we're doing what we said we were going to be doing. If you look down at the orange box, individuals with SCA individuals are really the center of the projects. And these participants elect to participate in the registries by allowing us to either just use their clinical data for research purposes. That's kind of the lowest hanging fruit and the minimum amount of involvement that they can select. They can also select to be on a contact list to be notified for future studies. Participants can select to participate in surveys that we send out, not more frequently than once a month, but those surveys are targeted for priorities that the community has and that the steering committee has established. And then finally, there's a biorepository as well, which is essentially saving a sample of blood that we can do future studies with. These individuals with SCA, some are actually serving on the steering committee, so you can see that going up to the point to the purple box. And you can also participate even if you're not seen in a clinic. That is one of the centers that Dr. T was showing us is participating in the full NASCAR program. If you flip over to the green, the clinic sites, these are our partners out in the academic centers that are seeing patients with SCAs and that have the opportunity to enroll them into the registry and to enter their data that is then clinically validated, which is really important because although we definitely value and want to get patient outcomes or patient reported outcomes, some of the things that are also important are not things that patients maybe know, specific lab results, for example. And those things are also potentially really important when we're thinking about predictors for the future or diagnoses and categorizations and whatnot. So from the clinical sites, we also have clinicians in multidisciplinary capacities serving on that steering committee. So important to get those different perspectives. And then finally, down at the bottom is kind of holding everything together. We have coordination among all of these entities. So we're the lead center at the University of Colorado. But as Dr. T mentioned, we also have a data management center, which is through Cincinnati, and they provide a lot of resources for allowing us to securely manage data and generate some reports and provide some more information back to the community as well, which we'll be working on over the upcoming years. And the whole point of this is that we will be able to have excellent natural history that is longitudinal at all different ages across all different X and Y chromosome variations. We'll be able to look down at clinic level as well as condition level metrics. And then we'll also have both a repository or a bank of both data as well as biospecimens that we're going to be able to do future research on. All right, so what is the overall goal of this? One of the big goals in studying rare disease is really that we actually don't have a lot of information from big populations to allow us to study some of the rarer conditions that may be associated with X and Y variations that we maybe don't even know about yet. So accurate numbers of who is affected and what they are affected by or with is one of the biggest goals for having a registry. So it's kind of idea of the natural history of what is happening to individuals with these conditions. That's particularly important given the change in the landscape of who we know is getting diagnosed with X and Y chromosome variations with the advent and adoption of the non-invasive prenatal screening in pregnancy. We are also able to see similarities and differences both between different SCA conditions, and we're able to track things over time. And we hope that this will be a resource for future studies and minimize overall resources that may be going into research when we do research in siloed departments, and maximize the benefits for everyone involved in the SCA community. Next, and then just to emphasize as well that we do want to do complex analyses that we haven't had an opportunity to do before, because with rare disease research, a lot of these more complex analyses requires hundreds of individuals within each group before you can start to do those comparisons. And we will be able to have that power with the Galaxy and Insights registries. Okay, so what do I do? As I mentioned, any individual with an X and Y chromosome variation is eligible to participate in Galaxy or Insights if you have Turner syndrome. So this QR code here is the consent form that you can actually go and read more about the study right now if you haven't, or if you're interested. On there, as I mentioned, the bottom line, the kind of overarching goal is that you give consent to use your medical records for research purposes. There are also then options to be on a list for new study opportunities and to participate in surveys. So those are both options that you can check when you consent into the study. Blood samples are also an optional procedure as part of the study, but are only available to those that are registering in clinics, because we have not yet figured out how best to do the blood samples remotely. So at this point, that's just an in-clinic option. All right, so what is our progress to date? So we have Insights on the left over here and Galaxy on the right. So there's 17 sites currently involved in Insights, with 874 girls with Turner syndrome that are enrolled. And we have had 3 publications thus far. And if you look at this QR code, this is kind of a live metric. We call it the dashboard of who the people are that are enrolled in terms of demographics. So looking at different specific Turner syndrome karyotypes, looking at race and ethnicity and age are examples of what you can find on that dashboard. On the other side, you have Galaxy, and this total has 5 total sites thus far, and we are likely going to be engaging more over the upcoming years. We have almost 600 individuals enrolled, also has resulted in 3 publications that I'm going to go over on the upcoming slides. And then the dashboard for Galaxy is here as well. So you can see which specific X and Y chromosome variations are are enrolled. And if you click on that, you will definitely see that there are a lot more, disproportionate amount of individuals with XXY. So we really do want to try to get those less represented karyotypes on there as well. Next slide. Okay, so I'm going to dive into one of those papers that I mentioned, one of those publications. This was an effort to look at, well, what does the community, particularly individuals with X and Y variations, as well as parents of individuals with X and Y variations, want us to study? So what are the research priorities? The steering committees for both the Insights and Galaxies registries got together and put together a survey, essentially, of the different priorities that we may want to consider in here. We had over 300 participants complete the survey, which was almost a 50% response rate, which is really quite good for survey research. Really important to have a high response rate when you're looking at surveys, because we want the surveys to really represent everyone that we think that they're representing. So this was all SCA conditions, and then, as I mentioned, both caregivers and self-advocates, so individuals with X and Y variations. And essentially, we asked a series of questions of how important is research on ... this topic. This graph right here is just one of the many graphs that you can find in the paper. This is for trisomy X and looking just at the physical health domains of what they felt was important. And you can see they want us to further study, in particular, fatigue or low energy when it comes to the physical health concerns. Lower on their agenda would be the autoimmune disorders that are down here at the bottom. So this gives us an idea of what the community is wanting us to study or is asking for more research on. Next slide. This is a busy slide, but this is called a heat map, also from this paper, that allows us to see that there wasn't one clear priority that really was obvious in terms of like everyone wants to have studies on X topic. We saw a variety of interests over the different domains that we were looking at. Some topics were of similar importance across all conditions, like these top ones on this heat map: anxiety disorders, ADHD, depression or mood problems. Those you can see all the conditions, which are each of those different columns there, are similar color. So it's a similar importance across all of those conditions. However, some topics were much more important to some conditions than others, like hearing loss, eating disorders, and skin problems. They're down at the bottom there. You can see that they're really not important at all. That's the lowest importance there in some of the trisomy conditions and much more important in the Turner syndrome group. Most topics were of similar importance to both caregivers and self-advocates, but we also saw that wasn't always true. Caregivers were more likely to rate research on seizures, fertility, self-sufficiency, and child development as important, more important than the self-advocates reported. All right. Another paper that we were able to publish using the Galaxy Registry was specifically on XXYY medications. And this was led by Joanna Dreyer, who is a pharmacist with our group. And she was interested in looking at, in particular, medications that are used for behavior or mental health. So that includes things like ADHD and anxiety, if you remember on the previous slide, of being important to individuals with X and Y variations. She developed a survey that was disseminated in the Galaxy Registry to all individuals with XXYY, and this was specifically about their experience being on these types of medications. And from that, she was able to not only write this paper that was published, but also develop a family guide, toolkit that you can see over on the right, medications for behavior and mental health in XXYY syndrome that the families or individuals with XXY can use when they're thinking about what does this mean to me, and if I am thinking about medications, what do other individuals with XXYY experience? So this is just a tangible example of what we can do with this database. So our 5-year plans for this grant period of NASCAR are to increase the number of participants within the registry, and in particular, representation of participants that we don't have very many individuals for right now. So especially adults and those with rare karyotypes. We also want to, with the help of the DMCC, improve the quality of the data that is in the registry. Now that we are actually have some dedicated money to be able to do this project, we are able to devote a little bit more time and energy for the sites to be able to enter data, for example. We also then will do a whole host of different studies looking at those different topics that were important to the community, comparing individuals with X and Y variations in those outcomes to the typical population, maybe between SCAs, and what it looks like over time. And then we also are expanding that biobank, and we'll be working with what's called Project 3, which we'll get to in a little bit, to use the biomarker, the saved samples in the biobank, as well as the data to look at biomarkers as predictors of outcomes in X and Y variations. All right, so I have a series of frequently asked questions here, trying to anticipate some of the questions that we'll likely get. The first one is, well, how is NASCAR changing given this how is Galaxy changing now that we have NASCAR funding? And in the broad scope of things, at least for participants, it's not changing that much. We developed Galaxy anticipating and really hoping for future NIH funding. And so the protocol and the consent forms that we had developed already included most of the requirements that we need. We will be adding some additional language, and we will notify everyone when we actually do move the data from the our REDCap or our database that's hosted at the University of Colorado cloud over to the DMCC cloud, but it will still have all of the same protections in place. And this change is really largely administrative rather than anything that is truly affecting the database itself. Another question I sometimes get is, well, who owns the data that are in Galaxy? And technically, the University of Colorado owns the data in Galaxy, but the governance of who uses the data still relies on the steering committee. So no one can go in and use the data without getting permission from the steering committee, and then us giving them the limited access that they need to specifically do the research question that's been approved by that steering committee. We will continue to honor that Galaxy is a collaboration and has always been a collaboration between the community and the research and clinicians. And so none of that is changing. All right. How can I join Galaxy if I'm not seen in one of the ECRC clinics or one of the clinics that are participating in this, the Galaxy Registry? You can actually go to www.galaxyregistry.org, and there is you can read more about the study on there, and then also enroll directly on there. There's a consent form, a link that you can find. You do have to, when you register/consent into the study, provide us with your genetic test results or give us permission to get these results from wherever you had them done. And so having that information when you go to sign up is incredibly helpful. I don't know if I'm enrolled in Galaxy. How do I check? Or I want to change my choices for the optional procedures, like, hey, I do want to actually get surveys, or I don't want to get surveys. You can get more information from us by emailing us at galaxy@ucdenver.edu. All right, I'm already enrolled in Galaxy. Do I need to do anything now that Galaxy is under the NASCAR umbrella? No, you do not need to do anything right now. We will be updating some of the language in the consent form, but this should not require us to get new consent because it's really, like I said, administrative rather than changing any of the core data protections or anything like that. We will, however, send an email to all participants that we have email addresses for, detailing the consent updates with the option to opt out of participation if this no longer aligns with your goals, because we want to respect that this is a change and that wasn't in the initial consent form. And then we also ask that you respond to any surveys that you are eligible for, that you get sent, because the survey response rate does matter when we go to put the data together and really what we are saying about the respondents in the community. If we only have a handful of people reply, we don't know if that's because if that's truly representing everyone. All right, how do you keep my data safe? We have many rigorous screening protections, and we follow all of the rules and laws that we have to do, not just for when you're seen in clinic, for example, but then above and beyond that for research data privacy. We store all of the data in a password-protected database that is only accessible to research team members that have been trained in human subjects research. And we also assign a unique participant ID so we can minimize the places that you have personal identifiable information in there. And then what if you're not okay with the change to include that Galaxy and your data is included under this bigger NASCAR umbrella with RDCRN funding? Again, you'll receive this opt-out option to when we are going to be moving over the data to the RDCRN platform. All right, I just want to acknowledge our Galaxy Steering Committee. Some of us were able to be at the last Access meeting in person and have a picture of some of the folks there, but this is the interdisciplinary committee that is representing clinicians and researchers and affected individuals and parents of affected individuals, and that has really driven all of the work that is behind Galaxy in the kind of oversight leadership decisions. Okay, and then the last two projects, Outcomes Project and then the Biomarkers Project, I think we're going to have additional webinars to dive a little bit deeper into. The Outcomes Project is led by Siddharth Prakash, who is a cardiologist from Texas, and then John Strang, who is a neuropsychologist from Children's National in DC. And they are essentially taking the research priorities that we had done from the survey and taking it much further and deeper and diving in to understand the research priorities on a more granular level for the SCA community and different facets of the SCA community. And this will involve things like focus groups and interviews, and as well as some additional surveys and that they'll be telling you more about in the upcoming webinars. And then the next part of that project is to determine the best way to measure the outcomes that are priorities for the SCA community. For example, if we identify that ADHD or anxiety are priority outcomes, we want to find out, well, what are the best ways to measure these in this particular population? And then Project 3 is Biomarkers, and this is being led by Dr. Armin Rosnahan from the Intramural NIH, and he is going to be able to take the biospecimens that we have, as well as the data that we have from Galaxy and Insights, and we're going to study if there are particular markers in the blood that can predict some of the outcomes that we see clinically. All right. So last, we want to offer you opportunities to engage with NASCAR. We are very, very excited about this initiative and having this infrastructure to be able to really expand the sex chromosome aneuploidy community research initiatives. And we want to partner with you and have you involved in this as well. So in addition to enrolling in Galaxy, which I hope you all do, please, if you have any questions or concerns about or you want to learn more, I'm happy to talk, or anyone on my team is happy to talk through that. We also have opportunities to join committees or subcommittees, either that are currently in existence or that we will be building as part of NASCAR. For example, we're going to be starting a youth group for a youth advisory group in the upcoming years, and that'll look specifically at teens and some younger adults and what they are prioritizing and what that looks like. You can also share personal photos or stories for the NASCAR website or our newsletter that we will be doing quarterly, I believe, is the plan for that. And then participate in research projects, particularly Project 2, which will have more opportunities coming forward. All right. Dr. T, do you want to take over?
Yeah, well, this is our leadership team here that includes myself, David Hong, and Judy Ross, which we talked about for the different cores. And then the projects are being led by Dr. Davis, Dr. Strang, Dr. Prakash, and Dr. Rosnahan that Shanley just described. This team plus others, the others on this team here, have really been instrumental in getting the grant put together, which was a huge grant, over 1,000 pages, and for really getting this initiative started. Here you can see Susan Howell, who's our genetic counselor, and CJ Akomi. They're leading our communications committee. Sharon Close and Kelly Rinaldo are leading the Partnership Engagement Committee. Our administrative team, Kayla Mollison and Karen Regan, and then Ginny, who's helping and representing on, well, as part of our leadership executive council team, and then also supporting participation on the RDCRN PEG committee. And then here you can see all of the different other people who are involved in terms of all the site investigators from the different sites for Insights in Galaxy, and who are part of also our faculty, all the representatives from our different groups, and then other people who are supporting our research support team and our team members from the NIH. So you can see there's a lot of people involved in this, and we are, again, very appreciative to all of these people and their teams for helping us get this together. And then here's all our QR codes. We're getting good at these. And so you can sign up or see anything you want. So I think now what we will do is stop sharing and then move on and take any questions.